Good afternoon, guys. My name is Ajay, and this is an introduction to a new series on my channel where I'll be teaching you guys everything that you need to know about biochemistry for the MCAT. In this video, I'll be going over the basics of the MCAT and breaking down the subjects in biochemistry that I'll be covering in future videos. I'll be highlighting the important topics as I go along, and I highly recommend studying those topics in extensive detail. First, we need to understand the structure of the MCAT. I have broken down the structure of the exam into this table right here, and it details all the specifics of each topic and how they are tested in each section of the exam. Now, as you can see, 25% of the questions from both the first and third section are going to be biochem based. That means you will be getting about 30 questions from biochemistry alone on test day. That is one of the most tested subjects on the MCAT, behind only biology and psychology. Because of this, I highly recommend prioritizing these three subjects when you start studying. Now, before I break down the material I'll be covering in this course, let's go over the scoring for the MCAT. I feel like this is a very important thing to discuss when preparing for an exam, as it helps establish a goal for one to reach. Each section is graded on a scale from 118 to 132, with 125 being the average score. Cumulative scores are based from 472 to 528. Let's take a look at some of these important scores that I would like to highlight. Let's start off with 501. 501 is the 50th percentile. That's the average score of all test takers. Ideally, you would want to start with a score much higher than this to make yourself appear competitive for medical school. A good benchmark for most test takers to reach would be 510. 510 is the 80th percentile. And assuming all your other stats, such as GPA and extracurriculars, are solid, reaching this percentile will round you out as an overall competitive candidate for medical school. The last score I would like to highlight is 515. If you're hitting this, you're in the top 9% of all test takers. This is an incredible accomplishment to achieve, and AdComs will recognize you and see that you are more than capable of being a medical student. Assuming your other stats are decent, a 515 or higher will almost guarantee you a spot in medical school. Alright, now that we covered the basics of the MCAT, let's go into the specifics of the biochemistry that will be tested on the exam. I have broken the topics I'll cover into 3 parts based on overarching concepts. Each section from these parts will be its own video, and I'll be posting them regularly to this channel, so make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Part 1 will start off with the basics of biochemistry, amino acids and proteins. These concepts will cover the building blocks of biochemistry and will explain the structure and function of our body's smallest molecules. The 3 concepts listed below are very important and account for almost 40% of the biochemistry that you'll be seeing on test day. 40%. I will particularly emphasize the importance of the enzymes video that I will be posting, as this is a very high yields topic on test day. If there's any video that you should be watching, I would recommend the enzymes video. Other high yield topics from this part will also include peptide bond formation from amino acids and protein structure and denaturation. Part 2 consists of macromolecules present in our body: carbs, lipids, and nucleic acids. These videos will contain information about how our body creates and regulates these macromolecules in order to carry out our basic tasks to keep our body functioning. These concepts account for about 33% of what you're going to see on test day from the biochemistry questions. When it comes to carbohydrates and lipids, I wouldn't particularly say they're difficult topics to cover, so as a result, they aren't really high yield topics. However, I'll still cover them, and I would recommend paying close attention to questions about carbohydrate classification and complex carbohydrates. These are tricky questions that most students tend to make mistakes on, so I would recommend going over those while you are studying. Nucleic acids are much more complex, however, and they'll take significant time to understand. DNA is important to understand as it provides background information for understanding RNA. Because of this, I would highlight DNA structure as an important topic to study. Biotechnology is also a high yield subject for this exam, so I'd also recommend studying that as well. RNA is one of the most important concepts in biochemistry, as it's the basis for replication and processing of all our genetic material. Along with enzymes, it is the most tested concept on the exam. Because of this, I will highlight all of RNA to be studied. It's a high-yield topic and should be studied extensively to do well on this section. It's a very difficult topic, and I cannot stress how important it is to cover RNA when it comes to studying for the MCAT. Now finally, part 3 will consist of the remaining 29% of topics covered on test day. These topics are transport systems and the metabolism of macromolecules. These topics build significantly off of the previous part, so I'd highly recommend watching these videos in order. Biological membranes and carbohydrate metabolism focus on the transport of molecules and glucose across the cell membrane, and are topics that most students should be very familiar with by this point. The only topic that I would consider high yield here would be glycolysis. But understand the other topics as well, as they all build upon each other. In the second part of carbohydrate metabolism, I will highlight the citric acid cycle, as well as the electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation. These all play a role in cellular respiration, a complex cycle that I'll cover in extensive detail as there is a lot going on in this cycle. These will most likely be the longest videos in this series, but on the bright side, the lipid and amino acid metabolism video, it will most likely be the shortest video in the series, as they are not common topics that will appear on the MCAT. And the last part of metabolism is a regulation of it. The most important topics in this section would be thermodynamics, as well as ATP and the redox equations. They're very important as not only do they show up on the biochemistry portion of the exam, but they also show up in other sections, particularly the biology and general chemistry portions. Now, that covers all the general concepts that I'll be covering in this video. I'll be regularly uploading videos covering each topic in detail, and I will cover everything that you could possibly see on the exam, as well as test-taking strategies to efficiently manage your time. If you guys have any specific topic that you'd like me to cover in a future video, please feel free to leave me a comment, and I'll do my best to cover it. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all later.